Hi, it's Destro7000 here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about what Farscape is. Farscape is an Australian sci-fi show brought to life by the Jim Henson Company, who you may know as the ones who brought the Muppets to life. Because it's by the Jim Henson Company, it features a lot of puppetry, not like the puppetry they used to do, like fuzzy felt things like Kermit the Frog and Cookie Monster. These puppets are more akin to Star Wars, or the other Jim Henson thing you may recognise, the Dark Crystal. I say Star Wars there, you wouldn't have had Farscape without Star Wars, I think, but the kinds of things that happen in Farscape, to me, are far surpassing what happens in Star Wars. They've gone a level higher than that, crazier and cooler. The name Farscape refers to the module Farscape 1, which is like a little special space shuttle piloted by John Crichton. John Crichton's an astronaut for the International Space Agency, which in this, it's not NASA, it's IASA. So John Crichton's an astronaut because his father was an astronaut, and following in his father's footsteps, because his father landed on the moon in this alternate universe, John wants to be his own kind of hero, so he prepares this experiment and goes up in the Farscape 1 module, and he wants to test his own space theory. So he's testing this manoeuvre he's designed. It's called the slingshot manoeuvre. However, I think that is an actual manoeuvre that exists in real life that is different from what he's doing, but that's besides the point. So while he's testing this manoeuvre that he wants to do, he comes into contact with a wormhole, just kind of comes out of nowhere, sucks him up and spits him out on the far side of the universe into basically an interstellar war. And the first thing he sees on his module are all these starfighters zooming around, and he crashes into one, well, he bumps one accidentally and it spirals off into an asteroid and explodes. So what's going on in this space battle is this big empire called the Peacekeepers are trying to capture a mutinying prison transport ship called Moya, the Leviathan. It's actually a living ship, so that's why the name Moya, and it's breaking free from a convoy that was going across space. And as the prison ship's escaping with the mutineering prisoners, they pick up John and they capture one of the pilots of the Peacekeeper starfighters before they escape into a kind of hyperspace thing called Starburst. So this Leviathan called Moya, this prison ship, it's kind of like a whale that's been hollowed out, and it's kind of got architecture placed inside, but all the architecture is sort of alive. It lives and it grows kind of like a tree. This ship is alive. It doesn't necessarily kind of talk or communicate, but it is in a symbiotic relationship with another life form, its pilot, which is this turtle fella. He's called Pilot, and he sits in the centre of the ship, and he kind of helps guide it, and he's kind of grafted to the ship. He doesn't have any legs, he's kind of grafted into the seat in the middle of the ship. He's who you have to talk to if you want to talk to the ships that you're living in. And so John's stuck in the ship, and he's stuck in with a bunch of prisoners. They're all aliens, and they're all from different places and backgrounds, and they all just want to get the heck out of there. And they all kind of can't get on with each other. They just kind of argue, and they hate each other, and they hate how they've been ripped away from their homes and stuck in jail for so long, and they finally managed to get free, and they're just kind of aggressive and having a go at each other. You've got the big tentacled Viking warrior guy, a Luxon called Dargo. You've got this peaceful, blue, bold woman priest called Zahn. She seems really calm and peaceful, like she's all under control and keeping it together, but there's this kind of inner rage that you see every now and then. There's this tiny little guy on a chair who hovers around. It's kind of like Yoda. He's really short. He's called Rigel, and he's a king. He's been deposed, and he's really short and tiny, and people just treat him like crap because he's short, and he's not used to being treated like crap because he's royalty. So he's kind of been knocked off his perch from really high up in society by a coup, and he's gone right down to the bottom again, and he's kind of got to deal with his new position. He's always got kind of questionable motives, and he's always kind of on the edge of becoming a bad guy because he's really selfish, but he never quite falls that far. Then you've got this prisoner who's one of the peacekeepers, who's been I guess captured by the prisoners. She's the most humanoid looking, so Crichton's like, you're like a human, but she says, no, I'm something called a Sebacean, and that's what all the peacekeepers are, these Sebaceans, very human-like species. And so all the other prisoners don't like her because she's a peacekeeper. She's kind of the ones that got them into this mess, but at the same time, she has been thrown out of her own nation. She's said to have been irreversibly contaminated. Kind of like the Empire in Star Wars, the peacekeepers are mostly this entire one race called Sebaceans. They don't have many aliens in their ranks, although occasionally they do tend to hire alien races. And later on, as Series 1 progresses, you meet two other members of Moya's prisoner crew. Gianna, who's this kind of white-grey girl. Her species is called a Nabari, and she's a criminal because she's a fugitive from her race, because she's allied to a faction of rebels who want to bring down her species' government. Her species are pretty nasty in what they do. They have lots of kind of pain-giving technology and weapons of mass destruction. And the final prisoner that you meet in Series 1 to join Moya's crew is Stark, who Crichton meets in a prison. Crichton thinks he's schizophrenic and he's insane because he acts crazy all the time in his cell, but he finds out later it's kind of all an act, and there's this other side to him. And he's a Bannock slave, Stykera, which is a kind of healer guy. He's got a mask over half his face, and when you take the mask off, there's this kind of scars that glow. They kind of take away evil thoughts, store them in his head to kind of heal people. So Crichton's on board this prison ship, and he's on board with all these people who just want to go home, and they're all infighting with each other, and each one has their own agenda, has their own way of trying to get things done, and none of them can get along, and they're just trying to avoid these peacekeepers who want to recapture them. Crichton himself is like the best of the best. He's a physicist, he's working, at the space program from Earth. He's got a wicked sense of humour, spews cultural references, but going around this weird universe he doesn't understand, he starts to go crazy, he starts to go really mental as each series progresses. And the reason Crichton's treated as one of these criminals originally is because the captain of the Peacekeepers, Bylar Crace, who's this kind of bearded fellow, Crichton nudged this starfighter as he came out the wormhole, went spiralling off into an asteroid. That was his brother, and he finds out, he gets wind of this, and he just is doggedly persistent in trying to pursue Crichton until he can kill him and get his revenge. So the story jumps around from being on Moya and trying to deal with this living ship and all that involves. They go from planet to planet, and you get to learn this weird new universe. Certain races come back, and you start understanding who does what in this universe. With Farscape you've got this great detailed universe, got all these different aliens that they're not just kind of humanoid, they're slightly more in the direction of what I would think of aliens, all this kind of varied menagerie of not just human looking species. It's not like Star Trek where it's just a bit of makeup on the face of a human to try and make them into an alien. Because of puppetry, there's a lot of different shapes of creature they can have. Tentacle beasts and giant bugs and godlike aliens and kind of energy eaters and parasites. You've got all these weird, varied types of being. They have CGI in Farscape. They use it kind of sparingly, like when they cut to wide shots of Rigel, because Rigel's kind of this puppet, kind of like Yoda. When you cut to a wide shot, they need to turn them into CGI. And then space battles and things, which aren't the best CGI you've ever seen, but it's passable and it serves the storyline. If anything, it just left them to spend their money more on things like the puppetry and the lighting and the sets, and those are just really amazing. So there's so much depth and complexity in what actually happens. There's 4 main series and one kind of TV movie, I guess, like a 2-hour movie, or is it a 4-hour movie? Can't remember. Each series has like 22 episodes, so it's quite long altogether. It's great to watch the interplay between all the characters and slowly see the friendships develop, especially between like Crichton and Dargo, and you get to have fun watching Crichton slowly lose his mind, especially when they introduce the major villain Scorpius, who is kind of this, I guess you could, if you blended the Emperor with Darth Vader, it'd be a bit like Scorpius, except he's kind of this guy who's got a disability. But he's the thing is, he invades Crichton's mind because he wants to find out everything Crichton knows about wormholes, but Crichton won't let him, so he goes into his mind and just tries to drive him even more insane. He kind of plays on his lostness in this new universe. You actually find out that as the series go on, the way that Crichton finds a way of defeating all these villains is actually to envelop them into his crew. So you find out, Bylar Crace eventually ends up working in Moya's crew, and Scorpius ends up going into Moya's crew. Then later on, a couple other villains that get taken under his wing as well. Eventually you get to see them go back to Earth, and you see how all the humans have to deal with this threat of this alien empire they never knew about. There are also these great kind of dream sequence episodes where Crichton thinks he's back on Earth, but actually he's inside his own head, inside these dreams, or he's been put in this kind of matrix by an alien who wants to get inside his head and get at his thoughts. A lot of the series is about kind of insanity and how people can get inside your head and screw with your mind and your emotions and your feeling, and get inside your mind and do things, and get inside your dreams and do things. And it's like, how can you protect your brain, how can you protect your own thoughts from these people want from you? And away from all that insanity stuff, you've got another running theme that I haven't really seen in any other TV series. It focuses on kind of getting you to feel physical feelings like sickness, confusion, disorientation, queasiness, and how your body can be altered and changed. At one point, Crichton goes off to another Leviathan and he finds there's this alien living there, and this alien kind of clones Crichton. But it's not cloning. The thing about cloning that a lot of other sci-fis play on is that when you clone someone, there's an original and then there's a degraded second twin who was cloned from the original. In this, the alien says, you are both the original. Exact split. Like a cell that is kind of... So at this point in the series, Crichton is split into two original Crichtons, and one goes off on one adventure and one goes off on the other, and you kind of follow them both, because this one's with half the crew, this one's with the other half. So there'll be an episode where you follow one Crichton and you follow another Crichton, and they're both the same guy, but they're both different guys, but they're not. And it's like trying to get your head around that. So I guess it kind of depends which twin you empathise with. I'm going to leave it there anyway, because I've realised there's so much I can say about this show that I can't say in such a small space of time, and I really recommend it to you. You should really watch it. It is heresy, but I think it's a Star Wars beta myself. There's more depth to it. It wouldn't have existed without Star Wars, but there's more depth to it and more amazing things to discover. It's easy to fob it off as a silly Muppet thing, but it's not. It's brilliant, and it's a shame that people don't think of it as classic, because it's one of those. To me, it's one of those big things like Star Wars, Predator, Alien. It's one of those big franchises that kind of slots in there. And you've got to see it. See it. Best TV series you'll ever see. Give it a chance. Farscape.